I'm here with my friend Brit. Welcome, Brit.
Hi, thank you so much.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So this is like a full circle moment. You and I were in a group back in like 2016, 2017,
Oh,
2018,
yeah.
2018, because I had a young infant and we were masterminding, starting like planting seeds of ideas. And like this was before I was fully like in my role as a fertility coach and my book hadn't been out or any of that stuff. And so it's like you and I go way back and like we've recently reconnected again, which I'm so grateful that you've been open to sharing your conversation, your story, what you've gone through on your path to motherhood. So I honor you. Thank you for being here.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm so honored and a little nervous. My hands are sweating.
I get it. I get it. Whenever I do conversations and interviews too, I'm like, okay, we're just like befriending fear and we are excited. We are shifting into a space of excitement. So I get you. Don't worry about this. I got you.
I know.
But
Like
our
I
paths to motherhood, yeah, they're just so like so personal. And
yeah.
I'll let you open it up. I mean, when we connected and I was starting this work in the IVF space and you've shared with me, it was really hard for you to hear some of that
Yeah. Yeah.
at that time. And you are now a mom to a beautiful 5-year-old boy, who I just can't wait for you to share his story because I don't fully know all the ins and outs of how he came to be and where you started and how you navigated through your path. So I'll let you,
Yeah.
if you want to kick it off, like where you were as you were wanting to become a mother in
Mhm.
the beginning. Did you always want to become a mom? Was that something you always wanted to do?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It was one of those things where I never knew if I would be good at it. I couldn't really picture myself doing it, but I knew I wanted to do it, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it was interesting because before my husband and I even got married, he told me, he's like, I want to adopt a kid someday. And I just really feel called to adopt a kid somewhere from Asia. And I was like, okay, okay. And um, you know, we thought that our whole plan was, we went and lived in Germany for 2 years. And while we were there, we're thinking about the future and that we would, start a family when we got back. And it was, let's see, the summer that we got back, yeah, we were living with his parents because we were getting our new townhome was being built. And we're like, yeah, let's start trying to go for this kid, which is just a perfect time to try to get pregnant when you're living with your in-laws. Um, so so then and so like all this weird stuff was happening when we eventually moved. And I was just the first few months of living in this townhome, like oh my gosh, I was actually just reading a lot of stuff that I wrote about it, and how I was just going through a really rough time. And I was like, I think I should go get my hormones checked. Something's up. Not even thinking that infertility was a thing, right? But uh, it had been about 8 months of trying, and my doctor's like, yeah, we're gonna run a bunch of tests, but let's also do your anti-malarian hormone. Like, I don't,
Yeah.
whatever that means, sure.
Yeah.
So then oh my gosh, before she called me, I just had this pit in my stomach, right? Those in that waiting period, just knowing something, I'm like, uh-oh, something's up. And I don't remember the exact number, but I know that the number of eggs was like equivalent of a woman 12 years older than me.
Okay.
And at that time, well, how old was I? Like 34, 35. And so I was like, oh my gosh, are you basically telling me I have no eggs? And she's like, pretty much, but here's some info for a doctor and they'll give you the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So, but that day I texted David this information because I didn't want to see the look on his face. And I wanted him to have time to digest. What I didn't know is a couple days prior, he was at this men's breakfast at our church, talking to a man who told him that he adopted 2 children from South Korea and he felt so called to do that. And David later told me, he's like, when I got that text from you, I felt clarity. I felt like this was our sign. Because our plan was to have a couple bio kids and then adopt a child later in life, right? We're like, I think our time is now. I think it's now. And I will never forget the day that I just felt so aligned with that decision. And I was dancing in my kitchen and of course posted a video of it, but then had some cryptic message about, when life hands you a tragedy, it's time to stand up and dance with bravery and, what's waiting for you on the other side of fear. Of course, I was terrified of, adopting a kiddo from another country. But it just felt so right. But then of course we start talking to everyone. And then we get the idea of, well, we should probably just try. Let's try the fertility path. Let's just see what happens. And gosh, I think so. We made it 4 months. And it was just, for me personally, just all the appointments and the blood work and the having to call them immediately when you got your period, or I don't even remember some of the full details, but
did they guide you to IVF right away? Was it IUI? What was that first initial?
We were going to try, I think we were going to do IUI first.
Okay. Okay.
All I know is that I got, I was taking the supplements and I just felt under so much pressure and was incessantly reading labels and just constantly Googling like, oh, I'm out of breath. Am I pregnant? Oh, I just sneezed. Am I pregnant? Like, just constantly wondering, is it time? Is it time? Is it time? And then as soon as I started taking, I think it was DHEA. Is that what they give?
DHEA maybe. Okay. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it just threw me off. And I will never forget calling my fertility doctors and telling them how weird I felt and how I needed to just stop all of this. And they asked me at one point, they're like, I was like, I just haven't been in a good place. And they were like, hey, Brit, have you had thoughts of hurting yourself? And I paused because I definitely had, but I didn't realize it until someone asked me, like sometimes you can get into that space and you don't even know that you're there.
Yeah.
And there was all this dramatic stuff that happened, but with that, they crossed some boundaries. They called David when he was at work. They were like, hey, you need to go pick your wife up right now. And anyway, none of this, I'm getting way too into the weeds here, but,
so treatments you tried for like 4 months, with the hormones, and it's interesting because like they didn't even it was because of low AMH was kind of the original cause of them guiding you down. Okay. And so 4 months of like, you couldn't handle it. And I understand many can't. It's like,
it's
intense.
Yeah. And so we just decided to pause everything. We're not even going to think about anything. And I remember I paused my business. I went and worked at a golf shop, which I ended up staying at the golf course for 2 years and ended up helping run the place. I thought I'd be there for the summer. And I'll never forget, we're sitting there some night watching a show and someone's holding a kiddo and I just start crying. And he basically was like, all right, if you're even this close to being ready, we got to dive in. Because if we're going to do this, it's going to take a long time. So let's just get it going. And I was like, good idea, because I'll never be ready. So let's just get going. And we had thought, we had known a good handful of people who had adopted from South Korea. And it was just with the foster care system and the healthcare and everything, we're like, let's just start there. And as soon as we did, it was just wild how many signs we had and conversations we had where we're like, this is where we need to be. And they're like, hey, it could take up to 2 years. It won't. And this is before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, cool. And it took exactly 2 years, and everything that could go wrong went wrong along the way. But for some reason, this path, there was no question. There was never any question of whether or not we were supposed to do this path. And I mean, my faith grew tenfold through that whole thing. We grew so much closer. I mean, we had to spend 2 weeks in quarantine when we got to Korea. We had no choice but to just
Wow.
get
So
super
that's a remarkable. You had friends that had adopted from Korea. And so that's amazing. I mean, I think a lot of people don't even know where to begin. Like if you want to go down the adoption process, you had friends you could reach out to, and they kind of led you to an adoption agency. That's where it started. Okay. And then how does that process, if you can just share a little bit of that, like you submit your interest, what is a little bit of that process like?
It's actually quite similar to domestic adoption in the way of tons of paperwork, tons of stuff. I mean, they ask you questions. They know everything. They know everything about you.
Okay.
They need to know all the medications you're on. You get all this blood work done. And we took Rorschach tests, the ink blot test. That was part of it. We had to get 2 other psych tests, psych evaluations, fingerprints. I mean, and then a social worker who comes to your house and interviews you, and the international piece, we had to wait for our EP approval, the immigration permission, basically permission from Korea to say, yes, this child will be able to leave at some point. And that took a while. And
so this is over the course of like, before you even got to Korea, like a year of this or a couple years? How long did it take you? Like, okay, we want to adopt from Korea.
All in, it was basically 2 years from the moment that we submitted our first application to
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
bringing him home. So
Takes time. And then so going there and share with us, like, so what was that like? You arrive and did they have a match for you? Like, how did that happen?
Oh, so we actually knew of him for a year, basically, almost.
Okay.
Yeah, I was sitting on the patio at the golf course eating lunch one day and got a phone call, and she's like, okay, here's the phone call that's going to change your life forever. You've been matched with an adorable little boy. And they send this email with all this information about him and a little bit about his birth parents even, and a picture of him, and then him sitting on his foster mom's lap, and he was dressed up and he was wearing a bow tie and he was so adorable. And we found out, I think there's so many dates in my head. We were matched with him in September.
Of what year was that?
September of 2019. Oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. September.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. September 2019, because then, so it's about a year of getting everything going. Then we get matched. Then every month we would receive pictures of him and a little report of what he was doing. And we would send some gifts out there. And
how old was he again when you got matched?
So he was 1 year and 1 month.
Okay. Wow.
That was crazy to find out about this child that had actually been on this earth before I had even known of him, you know, like, oh, it was just, and when I go back and see certain things that were happening at certain times, I'm like, oh my God, this was all so meant to be.
Part of the plan. Wow.
Yeah. And then, gosh, and then, so we went out there, we left, let's see, end of August, 2020. Yeah. No one's on the airplane because no one's flying.
Oh, good. Oh my gosh.
The flight was even comical. They're like, okay, get ready for a lot of turbulence, hours of turbulence, because there was not only one typhoon, but two, and we were landing right in the middle of the timing.
Oh my gosh.
And somehow we had zero turbulence. What is that all about? And then, so we go into this 2-week quarantine. You couldn't leave the room. If you opened the door, an alarm would sound. There were people with hazmat suits bringing us meals to our doors. We had to take our temperatures and record it on this app. And 2 days after getting out of quarantine, we went and met him, spent 1 hour with him and his foster mom and a translator. 2 days later, we hung out with just him on our own for an hour. Then on that Friday, we went to court.
Oh my God, Brit, take it back. What was the moment like? You lay your eyes on him for the first time. What is that like?
It was surreal. It was so surreal. He was just so happy, right? We had no idea how this would go. We were expecting him to be super shy and reserved. I mean, how could you not? And he was so happy and had such a great time. And
oh my gosh.
And then we go to court, and we don't even know that we're going to get custody still. We meet this child, we spend time with him, and basically this is all in the hands of this woman who had rejected the first family that she ever had a case with. She rejected because one of the parents had ADHD. So I was like, well, when she sees my paperwork with my anxiety and my depression and, you know, all these things, that's, how's that going to go?
Oh my God.
So I was actually asked a lot of questions about that in court. And then we had to wait about 6 weeks until we knew if it was a go.
Oh my gosh. You're hanging out in Korea. 6 weeks. Yeah. Okay.
And that ended up being so fun. Actually, we met other families that had the same court date as us. There were 15 families.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of them stayed because the quarantine was like $200 a night or something for two. I mean, it was just crazy.
Whoa.
So then we get custody, and then that's a whole other story too. We had to stay 5 nights later because our fingerprints had expired, and and no one.
Well, it's like curveball after curveball. Like setbacks don't ever stop. Like that's one thing, right? In life. Through fertility treatments, through anything, through adoption. It's like you roll with it. You learn to adapt. What can you do? You know, you can control how you react to things. That's what I believe. That's what my mom instilled in me. You can't control what happens. Right? Wow.
I know.
Okay. So you're there and okay. So you get your fingerprints sorted, everything.
Yeah.
And then were you there for a while longer? Like, tell us that. And then they say, okay, everything went through. Like, what was that experience like?
Well, so the night that we got custody, we bring him back to the hotel and we're hanging out and playing, and he keeps playing with the phones, and we unplug them because who's going to call us at the hotel, right? And we go to bed, and at 4 a.m., someone's banging on our door. And the person who worked at the hotel was like, sir, so David goes to answer the door. Sir, you need to come downstairs right now. Something is wrong with your adoption. And we're like, oh, what? Like, what? Are you kidding me? And luckily I quickly look at my email, and our agency was like, we're so sorry about this, but your fingerprints were expired. That was a total oversight on our part. I don't think they expected that to happen. I mean, it normally doesn't take that long, to the point that they have no practice in this taking that long. Oh. And so They're like, your visa appointment cannot happen until these fingerprints with the USCIS get renewed. And they're like, you need to get on the phone and you need to beg them. And for a good few days, they kept telling us no, and it could take up to a month, and there was nothing they could do. And then finally we got through to this woman who pushed it through for us. And I mean, during that time, we only had a couple outfits because we thought we were just going to get right on the plane and go home. And so, here I am buying clothes at these Korean markets, and I don't even know what size foot he really has. And, the metrics are all confusing, and the clothes I ended up buying for him, we didn't wash. And he ended up getting a rash because there was probably formaldehyde in them or something, and such sensitive skin. And it was comical, but there were so many great, amazing moments, right? During those first 4 or 5 days that we were with him. And then we ended up flying home on October 28th, which is our lucky number. It's both of our birthdays. It's the day that we got married.
You flew home that day.
October 28th, yeah, is when we landed.
Wow.
And
oh my gosh. So he was a little over a year when you got him. He's now 5, right?
Yeah, so he was actually, when we came home, he was a little over 2, and now he's 5.
And English, I mean,
he
what? Tell me.
That was not only are you trying to bond with this child in the middle of the pandemic, in the winter, starting parenting with a toddler, but the toddler doesn't even speak your language, right? And they don't even really speak your language then, but oh man, I mean, and he came, his foster mom, these foster moms, they just love on these kids, but maybe a little too much, to the point that I don't think they ever told him no. And he came to us only having drank milk and grape juice and barely ever brushed his teeth. So that was fun, introducing him to drinking water and, hygiene. That routine at night was tough for a while. The language, there were definitely, he called us mom and dad, because that's what his foster mom, showed him a lot of pictures. And so that was really special. He called me, mommy and dada. And so it was just a lot of figuring it out as we went.
This process is just so fascinating to me. So was this agency, do they only work with Korea, or do they have multiple countries around the world?
This agency also worked with China, but that decreased a lot. And then they're actually closed now, the agency that we worked with.
Okay.
Actually, a lot has changed with Korean adoption, but there is still a lot of, there's still international adoption opportunities. I don't know a lot about them, but it's wild how many resources there are, and how many resourceful, helpful moms there are on Facebook and Facebook groups. I mean, I met a lot of people through that journey who were so helpful.
That's really good to know. So for anyone who's considering looking at adoption, searching Facebook groups, and were there specific ones that you liked, or?
Off the top of my head, I don't.
I'll include them in the show notes. I'll just include some links.
And if anyone is considering it, I would be more than happy to guide whoever. They can reach out to me, and I can get them in touch with whoever. And I have a few friends who are going through domestic adoption right now in Colorado. And there's, so much has changed even from the time that we started this. There's an app that's basically like Tinder for adoption, where these birth moms can swipe and look at couples.
Really?
And decide who they want to maybe go with. And
That's interesting. I do know of one agency, helpusadopt.org. Becky Fawcett runs that. So that's one resource I'm aware of. But can I ask, and cost is probably a common question. I know this is not a cheap process. And like
no.
IVF is very expensive. When people say, oh, just go do this, no, it is not that simple. Surrogacy is expensive, adoption's expensive. Like, can you give us like a ballpark range? You don't have to tell us exact amount, but like, can you share that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to share. I mean, but there's a range of it's about 30 to 50,000 is
30 to 50. Okay. Yeah.
and when you do international, it's a little more expensive. I think the fee alone to Korea was like 28,000 or something.
Wow.
Again, so much of this is so blurry,
That's
but
okay.
and I will tell you, when we were starting this, we were like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to pull this off financially?
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people who have done fundraising efforts. We were going to do this huge golf tournament. We were going to, do everything we could.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason why I did continue to work at this golf course, because I wanted to, make some consistent hourly income.
Yeah.
And that ended up helping. And David's work, actually, they helped out. They honored an adoption credit that his previous employer was going to honor, which helped tremendously. And
Wow.
it's
Wow.
wild what ended up happening as we moved forward.
Have you been back there since you adopted him?
We have not, but we're going in April.
You are? Oh my
Yeah.
God.
We're going to
Wow.
go to Japan for 3 nights and then Korea for 8. And we're bringing Jiwoo, and my father-in-law is coming with us, and we're going to meet foster mom again. And I can't.
Wow. You stay in touch with her? You stay in touch with her? Yeah.
Emails here and there,
Okay.
very brief. Sometimes it's just a picture, or she'll, send,
Yeah.
pictures of the last kiddos she was fostering. She sent a quick pic, and I was like, she's busy. She's got twin girls.
Oh my gosh. Well, I just love that you're sharing this story. I haven't shared an adoption story yet on my
I
podcast.
know.
And I'm just so grateful that you were open and, you were hesitant at first, like, I don't know if my story, I'm like, people need to hear this because you tried fertility treatments, and I
Right.
appreciate you being so real. That's when we connected, right? When I was doing, this work and wanting to, it's funny how our paths often like lead to our kind of our purpose and now what we're doing, right? You feel so called to support moms as well. And
Yes.
never probably expected to step in the space of the work that you're doing now. You're an author as well, right?
Yeah.
Mama Be Present. I mean, yeah, your book. We're gonna do a book exchange because we haven't done that yet. I can't wait when we see each other. But your book is Mama Be Present: 40 Yet Simple Magical Ways to Find Joy in the Toddler Days. So I can't wait to read that. And I just think, what you're doing, putting on events, which I hope you and I get to put some things together. We've talked about it. But yeah, like share a little bit about like what you have done. You've put on some events, Moms on the Mic, and
Gosh, yeah.
isn't that amazing? Like from when we met in 2018 and doing that group, and like, look at how much has happened in the last, 6 years ago? That was crazy.
Yeah. It's so wild. It's so wild.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. So when we got back, I just, put everything on pause, and I did try to work remotely a little bit, but it just it was tough. And then long story short, yeah, I just decided to pursue publishing this book. And one day Shibu and I were sitting on the couch and we were eating apples and nothing else was happening. And we weren't even watching a show or anything. And he was right next to me, and he leaned over and he kissed me on the cheek. And it had been a rough morning, but that kiss on the cheek just changed everything. And it got the wheels spinning in my mind of like, what else is possible? If something like this can change my whole day, what else is possible? And I also realized that he was going to turn 4 in less than a year. And I wanted to really soak that in because I had already missed the first 2 years of his life, right? And
Mm,
so I started posting these weekly posts. That's where I started Mama Be Present on a whim. Just wanted to
mm,
get some moms connecting and maybe feel inspired by whatever I was putting out there.
mhm.
And it was about, I met this mom the other night. She's like, I don't want to read that book because it's going to tell me everything I did wrong. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I actually talk about all the things and the small, simple things that changed everything. I was tired and exhausted and confused and wanted this season to be over, but I also knew that I would miss it. Like all the older moms will tell you to savor every second. But I just wanted to help in my journey of trying to soak in this really tiring, incredible season. I wanted to just have a conversation about it too.
Mhm.
Um, okay, now I'm talking too much about this.
No, it's so good. I mean, I love that the simple, he kissed you on the cheek and just those little reminders of like, that this is why you went this path to experience these simple joys, these little moments that like everything made sense,
uh,
probably these moments, right?
yes, and how, so I mean, I just started jotting down all the things that had helped me, really hard night before
Mm,
dinner. I grabbed
yeah.
the paper towel roll and was like, Chivo, it's time for dinner. And he, was super excited. And then that turned into bringing it through the bedtime routine and that helping us
Yeah.
connect and have fun during things that would normally be a little tiring. And I think for the first time, I wasn't looking at the clock to be like, okay, is it okay? Are we
Right.
done with this? Are we done with this?
Right.
So yeah, so I just put that out there, um,
Mhm.
self-published it, just wanted to just
Yeah.
get it out and not have, I feel like I've created so much digital content and so many courses and things that have not actually been packaged into anything tangible. So
Mm,
that was the first real tangible thing on paper that could have some sort of legacy.
yeah. Got it.
So then my launch event was super fun. I got, yeah, about 100 women together for the Mama Be Present experience, which was,
Mhm.
there were actual prompts that night and guided conversations, and women were drawing on the windows because that was one of the chapters. Some of them were lying on the ground because that's a chapter. And
That's so great. I'm so sad I missed that. I was out of town, I think, when you had that event. But I know there's future collabs together.
yeah,
Was Moms on the Mic? That was a separate event too, right?
yeah. So launched the book in May 2023, then held Moms on the Mic in October. Oh, I just
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get moms together again. And I
Yeah.
wanted to give, I just, I loved being up there and telling my story and I felt so seen, and I wanted other women to feel seen and appreciated and loved. And there's nothing better than getting a room of compassionate, caring moms and women together
Oh my
to
gosh.
especially watch someone else speak for the first time. The
Wow.
first speaker who got up was an open micer, and she started crying, and everyone just started applauding her. And then she totally crushed it. I was so impressed by every single woman who got up on that mic, and I
Wow.
definitely want to do something. I,
Yeah.
I want to do that again, but I'm working on
Mm.
another book, and my friend Jody's like, you got to stay focused. You got to stay focused because these events, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I kept pouring everything into them. And
No,
then,
I hear you. And something you and I've talked about is creating a space for, those who are in a waiting season. And you and I
yeah,
know that very well.
yes, yes,
Waiting for one day becoming a mom, waiting for me, it was during the IVF process, right? Holding on for one embryo and surgeries and setbacks, and you waiting for your adoption process to go through and
yeah,
who's going to be your match. And so everybody's, I think, can relate to waiting This
Oh yeah.
idea of waiting for something, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm. And so how is it like with motherhood now? I mean, you're doing so many different things and just motherhood. What is it like for you these days with a 5-year-old? Is he in kindergarten?
Yes.
Oh.
He is on the younger side because he's an August birthday,
Mhm.
and he's the school he's at is pretty rigorous. Like they've got homework every
Yeah.
night, and he's thriving. He's loving it. He just
Mm.
had his annual review for his speech IEP, and he's just doing so
Okay.
well.
That's awesome. I didn't know he's on an AP.
Yeah, and he his teacher says that he's very silly, but in a good way. And
Yeah.
I love that so much. And I hope that we can keep fostering that. And he just,
Yeah.
5 is 5 is fun because he's starting to say so many more things and
Mm.
really thinking things
Mm.
through. And
Mhm.
I mean, he makes us laugh so much.
Oh.
I just don't know how. People would always say, oh, I don't understand, but I just keep loving this human being even more. I didn't know I had the capacity to love someone even more. And I get it. I get it.
Mm.
Um, and it's, as you know, too, it's also whew, tiring.
I know. Oh my gosh, for those mamas in the waiting right now,
Yeah.
do you have a message? I mean, even if those who are maybe they're in the fertility treatment process right now and it's feeling just like for you, like you can relate, it's so overwhelming. Maybe it's feeling like it's taking over your life,
Mhm.
or it's just consuming you and sucking the life out of you. I mean, there's just, I would love to hear any kind of closing thoughts for those who, want to be a mom so badly and just being open, I think, to fertility treatments might not always be the
Right.
answer to your path.
Right. Right. Yeah. I would just say to any mom that's in waiting, yeah,
Mhm.
whether they are doing treatments or wondering what
Mhm.
path they should take, to just, you know, like your book says, hold on, baby, right? Like
Um,
just keep holding on. And, you know, when you look back at other seasons and other times when you were this, I feel like right when you're about to give up is right when something is about to happen, right?
mm,
Like sometimes we have to it's like, I
mhm.
just love, I'm so fascinated by how right before the sun comes up is right when the temperature gets the lowest,
Yeah.
everything gets the darkest,
Yes.
and then all of a sudden the light starts coming. And um, it's so tough in the moment to be like, what is it going to look like? And
Mm,
what am I doing in this? I can't do this. But yeah, I mean,
mm,
for me, like I had nowhere else to turn but to God. And I'm so glad that I leaned on the people that I did.
mm,
It literally has saved my life. And to just know that in this life where things are so fleeting and so uncertain, everything there is a plan. Everything is connected. And even the most heartbreaking things, they they are the things that are connected to something so much
mm.
better.
Yeah,
That
it's so beautiful.
something good is coming from that terrible thing. Something good will come from it.
Yeah. Well, that's so beautiful. Yeah. Keep moving towards the light and the darkness, right? Like sometimes it takes really getting to the deepest, darkest place for us to crack open, right?
Right.
For things to
Right.
start shifting.
And don't be afraid to crack open. You're
Yeah.
not going to burden anyone. That's how I felt for so long. And but I get a little frustrated when people, post, hey, if something is going on, don't hesitate to reach out. You know, I just lost a really close friend. Please let me know if you're in need. So many of us feel like we're going to burden someone if we're having a tough time. And a lot of times we aren't going to crack open. And so I think it's also important, even if we're in a season where we want someone to ask how we're doing, let's just keep checking in on each other too. Just reach out, just ask, just reach out. If you haven't heard from someone, just ask them how they're doing. I don't know if any of that really made sense, but
no, it's so good. I mean,
like, there's so much going on in our lives, but just sending a quick text can change everything for someone.
So true. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so grateful we're connected, and can't wait to, you know, support each other and all the things we're creating. And thank you for this conversation. So good. And I want to meet your Jiwoo someday. I haven't met him yet. So we need to get our kids together.
Play date.
Oh my gosh, I love it. All right. Well, love you, Brit. And I'll attach all of your information on where people can get your book and connect with you, all the good things below. So thank you so much. Love you, friend.
Love you too. Thank you.
Bye.